morning. I'm just leaving Manchester because today I want to ride Manchester to London, which is about, I think it's about 310k. Well, the route I planned is anyway. So I thought, what better time to share some tips of how to ride 300k. So the first tip, I think, riding anything above 100k really is, I think this is the main tip, is it's all like a mental game. Because I think if you can ride 100, you can ride 3 or 2 or 4. Because if you've got, I'll talk about the other tips, but like fuel, if you've got all that sorted and you're fit enough to ride 100, it is just all about, yeah, the mental game and what you tell yourself. So like even if I've done, so I'm just on a climb, it's long hill, so even though I've done a fair amount of like 200-300s, the start of any of those, even now I'm like, can I do it? I'm like, yeah, okay, of course you can. So it's just about, I kind of break them up. So I just think of this as like 3 lots of 100. I'm almost at the top of this now, I think. It's like an 8k climb, but to be fair, there's another little game I play. I've done, I think it's going to be about 3,500 meters, and I've done almost 1,000 in the first 50k. So I'm like, okay, the rest will be relatively flat. Look how pretty this is though. Next tip is food and drink, and you've just got to eat regularly. And I think that like with 100k, you could get around with barely really eating anything. But when you get into the 200s and 300s and plus, you have to keep eating and drinking. And like for me, I've actually got like a little alert on my Garmin that reminds me to eat. So I know, because sometimes you think, oh, I'm all right, I don't need to eat anything, but actually you're burning a lot. So another tip. And I think for me, like I say, I can only talk from my experience, I really like dates. So I have a date every like 20 minutes, well, I try to, until they run out, and then I get stuff from the shop like smoothies and stuff. So I don't know why I'm always get my camera out when I climb. Whew, I'm getting warm. And this is the first little bit I've got a bit of a tailwind. It's been crossing headwind the whole bloody way. Anyway, I'll stop moaning and catch up with you in a bit for the third tip. Remember that throughout the ride, you're gonna have like highs and lows. And to be honest, this morning, probably the first 80k was a bit of a low. I was like, oh, why am I doing this? Should I go back? I just settled into it. So I think when I first started doing endurance, I assumed that everyone else that did endurance just enjoyed it the whole time. And then I went to a talk at Rafa with Emily Chappell, and she's like an amazing ultra cyclist. She won Transcon in 2016. And I remember her saying about kind of the highs and the lows, and I was like, oh, I just thought it was just me that like felt the pain and the suffering and the struggle. I just thought I was really bad at it. And she's like, no, like everyone has like the ups and downs. And I guess that's kind of, it's gonna happen if you're doing something that's challenging yourself. It's not gonna be easy all the time, so just remember that. I'm in Melbourne and about 120k in, I think. Also, it is quite fitting, this tip, because of where I'm going, and you'll see in the next video why I'm going to London. You probably know already, it's not a secret or anything. There's another hill. Talking of hills, that's the other thing, is that when you're jumping up to like the next distance milestone, like 100 to 200 or 2 to 300, I would always say do a flat version of the new distance. So if it's 300k, do a flat 300 just to get used to doing the distance, because climbing just basically just adds extra just adds extra time in the saddle. So I think when you've mentally got past the distance marker, then you can add more elevation, and that's how I did it. Another tip is to check the forecast. Even though, saying that though, I did check the forecast and it wasn't meant to be this sunny. And so I've had to go and buy some sun cream. So I was like, I do not want to get burnt. So when you start to do longer distances, you're going to be out longer, obviously. And that means, yeah, you're going to take some more layers and potentially sun cream, which I wasn't planning on today. I'm not complaining though. So I'm about 170k or so in. I've just stopped at my first food stop. And yeah, it's really, really nice. Jesus Christ, this road is awful. I swear, for about 6 kilometers there's basically like a dip every 2 meters. Like, look at this. What have they done to it? What? It's like there's been speed bumps and they've just dug them up. Oh, can you hear that? Jesus, I hate this road. If anyone knows where it is, avoid it. So now I'm just gonna get my water and my favourite smoothie. I'm in Milton Keynes, by the way. And the other thing is knowing your route well. So I knew this stop was here, just gotta plan the route, and I knew where all the food stops. So like, know your food stops and know your route. And then also, same thing as that, is have a backup of your route. My route on my Garmin, and then I also use Quadlock. That's the case for it. Basically, it's just a little lock that you put on, back of the case, and that clips into place. So I always like to have a backup route. I've said this in like so many of my other like endurance videos, but I just find it really, really useful to have that as an option if I need it for a route or this podcast. So yeah, Milton Keynes, probably about, how far have I got left? 70k to go maybe. Sorry there's not been much footage, but the roads haven't been particularly pretty or just nice to film on, so yeah. But I've seen my first 3 red buses, so I'm not far, probably about 10k now. Made it to London. End point, 350 meters. I am so happy. 315k. Oh, I just want to eat so much food, eat all the food and sleep. I've got back, I've eaten and pooped though. I guess this is the other thing, the little tip is that not all miles or kilometres are created equal. I've done a much hillier on paper that just seemed so much harder, and I thought today it didn't seem as bad. It's just been way tougher because there's been more traffic, like way more wind. Also another thing, my hands are so sore, like the palms. I was like, do I need to get some tri bars? Is that a little bit over the top? I don't know. Anyway, good night. Good morning. This is a sports bra that I wore yesterday, tied around my head with a hair bubble. It got way too light, way too early. I've slept for about 10 hours, so I think it's probably time to get up. I just want to recap, and I think that the main thing that you can do if you're wanting to increase your endurance is the mental side of it, because I think the food and stuff you just get used to, eating, but it is just the mental aspect of like knowing you're going to be pedaling for X number of hours or days or whatever it might be, and I'm still learning to do that. And I also think we've all got our own individual limits of like what we think is a long way. And so for me, the way that I kind of deal with that is I look to people that have done like way more than me, because I'm basically just doing a few longer rides, but there are people that are doing like ultra distance stuff. And I think it's just having those like inspirational like people in your head to look to when you're feeling like, oh, I'm struggling a little bit. And that leads me on to, I guess, the next video that you'll see, because now I'm going to Rapha Soho, because I'm doing a talk on endurance at Rapha with Emily Chappell. And Emily Chappell is like another one of these like insane ultra endurance riders. She won the Transcontinental race across Europe, I
think it's about 4,000 kilometers in, I think it was 2016, but she won that, and she was the one that really got me into doing more long distance. And so doing a talk with her, I'm like, what is this? So that'll be, I mean, I'm like the Audax and she's like ultra distance rider at the other end. So you'll see that video next, so that's where I'm gonna go now. So you'll see me like this at the start of the next video. I will leave a link to my Strava, also about the route. Not particularly pleasant. I think just getting into London, I don't think there is a really lovely way, especially when I'm used to the Dales where you literally just see sheep. It wasn't too bad, but give me the Dales, the peaks, even the lakes. I just don't like the busyness. Anyway, I'm gonna go because that's not, I don't know, I think that's another way that I found it like harder, because I was like, oh, this isn't the place where I love riding. So that's another little extra added on tip. Ride the places that you really love to ride. And riding in cities is not my thing. So, and I'm gonna have to go because I'm gonna be late. So I will catch up with you next video where I'm gonna be doing and getting some Q&As and just loads of stuff with the insane, inspirational woman that is Emily Chappell. So, okay, see you next video. Bye! What's the next tip? That can affect the weather. That makes no sense. I'm trying to think of anything else. No. Oh, I'm pooped.